Welcome back to The Verdict. What an interesting exchange, and we do promise that it'll be that interesting as we continue on until Saturday when the elections will hold, and then until the results come through. Fantastic exchange, wasn't it, Ladi?
Well, I mean, you know, I said the minute we saw Senator Milai and Barrister Keyamo, I said, this is going to be fireworks.
Indeed. And what we will do now is go live to our correspondent, Chris Elems. Chris is in the Surulere area of Lagos, I believe. Chris is not ready at the moment, so we move on, Ladi.
Okay, then in that case, let's introduce our guests for this segment of the discussion. First, from our Abuja studios, we have Mr. Dele Additional, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and Mr. Humphrey Ojiako, former permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland. Thank you both for joining us. Here in Lagos, of course, we are being joined by Dr. Abiola Kiode-Afolabi, who is an election observer, but she's also the chair of the Transition Monitoring Group. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, I started the introductions the other way, so maybe we should start the discussion this way with the lady. So much was made about the views of the election observers and how this postponement would impact negatively on them. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I think that's the thing we've been talking about, the political economy of the entire thing. For us as the Transition Monitoring Group, we have about 36 states that were working in for this election. And as at last Saturday, we had actually deployed, observers to very hard-to-reach places where they can't go in the morning. So people had gone to the creeks, people had gone to Baga and some other places, So, of course, there is a problem of cost. We have to recall some of them back, meaning that we have to find a way of, getting funds to
send them again.
So that's the major challenge.
So that means everybody has gone back and will now be redeployed.
Redeployed, to the stations, particularly those who are not living in the community where they are observing. There are some communities that we have to send people, to back up people who are observing from those local governments. So that's a major cost for most observers. So what it also means, for example, we have the Election Observers Platform, which observation platform in Lagos. So meaning that we also brought analysts, from all over the country, and we have to also send them back and also, bring them again. So those are the political economy of it.
Is there any apathy on their side, or are they happy to come back?
Well, I think one of them sent me a text to say, are you sure this election will hold? Do you want us to, come down, then, we go back again? And I said, well, I think from all what we have been hearing from INEC, the election.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question to you. Do you, from everything you've heard since the postponement happened, do you have more confidence now that come this Saturday, things will go better than they would have last Saturday?
Well, I think if we follow the INEC chair, particularly with his daily briefing, the briefing he did this afternoon, it's obvious that, well, it's up on his game, and I think that with all the criticism, he wouldn't want to fail Nigerians once again. So rather what we should do is to call on Nigerians to ensure that they all come out en masse so that we are not discouraged. It's important, this is our vote, this is the country. So it's important for us to participate in this election. So we shouldn't allow what happened, last week, to affect us from coming out, to cast our vote. So our own issue is we're telling everybody, well, it was bad last Saturday, but it will be good this Saturday. Hopefully.
Okay.
All right, going to Abuja now, Ambassador Ojiako, a lot has also been made about the international community's reaction to this postponement. It's been somewhat muted. They've made a few comments, but it's been somewhat muted, given the fact that it is an internal matter for the country to resolve. But, again, in terms of what Mrs. Afolabi referred to earlier as the political economy, there's the cost of it in terms of physical costs, in terms of costs, but there's also the, shall we say, political cost of it. What do you make of what has happened since Saturday?
Thank you so much for getting me involved in this program again. What has happened is a huge disappointment, not just to Nigerians, but to the international community as well, that holds Nigeria in very high esteem, at least in context of the African continent. So when we make these mistakes, big mistakes. We do not seem to be the giant of Africa we claim to be quite often. And it is really disappointing because these elections are 4-year programmed events. And the lack of preparation, 1, 2, 3, 4 years to that election does not tell good of us. That is why there's this level of disappointment both among the citizens and the international community. What we could say is we're now hoping that come Saturday the 23rd, all those logistical difficulties which should have been sorted out some months and weeks ago will now be in place so that we hold a free, fair, credible election. In my view, it is free, fair, credible election that can begin to redeem the image of Nigeria, because we are fighting this election as really a do and die, not even a do or die, it's a do and die affair. And it should not be so. We have had a number of elections now. Each of them was supposed to be an improvement on the previous one. But that's why a lot of people are disappointed. So many of our international friends who were expecting a much better, well-organized election this time are beginning to ask questions. Is Nigeria ready for democracy, or are we trying to force our way into something we're not mentally prepared for? And that's not good for our image. I think we should do a whole lot better. The cost, the economic cost alone, both to individuals, the political parties, and the government that conducts these elections is quite huge. And that's something we can't afford. Recently, the stock exchange was said to be recovering. And since yesterday, it has practically collapsed again. These things have consequences. And we should be appealing to our politicians to realize that some of these consequences are bigger than winning the vote. Nigeria is much bigger than winning elections. And we should do everything to not ridicule our country anymore.
Mr. Joko, let me just ask, while we were listening to the INEC chairman briefing, when he was talking about his action plan, you know, he reeled out a number of plans that the commission is going to do in the next couple of days, and even what they've done yesterday and today. But then he also said that looking at the sheer logistics operation for the 36 states of the Federation and the FCT, this was probably bound to happen. Do you think that it was bound to happen anyway, or could this have been avoided?
In fact, in a recent piece I was reading, and I contributed to it, I have always maintained that the idea of running Nigeria as one unitarized entity will not serve Nigeria well in the long term. Because this is a huge country, speaking demographically and geographically. And the complexities of Nigeria, especially in various difficult terrain localities, makes it a daunting task to conduct elections in the way we are doing it here. We copied the American system of presidential governance. But some of the things the United States does, in spite of its own logistical preparedness at all times, practically, given its level of development and status in the world, still, the United States does not conduct its presidential elections the way we are doing. That is one central body located in some distant place with a huge bureaucracy it has no immediate control over, operating in various distant parts of the country. And this is supposed to be synchronized simultaneously. Ipso facto, I think that's a difficult task in its own. If we took examples from the United States system, where the Secretary of State of each state in the United States conducts the elections, and the results are posted to the Electoral College, and you have a more seamless election. Yes, people will say, if you leave that to the states here in Nigeria, where we have weak institutions and tendentious executives of the states who will intervene, you might have more difficulties than the one we have already. But these are things to be studied, and the rule of law must be obeyed once it is made. We cannot make rules and then turn around to ignore them and expect wonderful results. They're not going to happen. So if these things are recalibrated, I think it is quite possible to conduct more seamless, free, fair, transparent elections in Nigeria. As it is at the moment, there is a lot of room for systemic change, really systemic change.